أفرأيت من اتخذ إلهه هواه وأضله الله على علم وختم على سمعه وقلبه وجعل على بصره غشاوة فمن يهديه من بعد الله أفلا تذكرون.
Before we understand science, it is natural to believe that God created the universe. But now science offers a more convincing explanation. This has been quoted by Stephen Hawking in September of 2014. He goes on to say, what I meant by, quote unquote, we would know the mind of God, is we would know everything that God would know, if there were a God, which there isn't. I'm an atheist. Again, this is a quotation from Stephen Hawking. In the same article, he says, in my opinion, there is no aspect of reality beyond the reach of the human mind. This is the first video I'm going to be doing in an indefinite series about atheism. Now, talking about atheism, many people may not realize that Islam itself has a lot to say about atheism. It's true that in Islam we talk a lot about polytheism. Now, polytheism, the word theism, is the common word between, polytheism, monotheism, atheism, and so on. Islam talks about polytheism a lot. And so some people might think, well, this is something that's new. Atheism is something new. The reality is it's not new. It's been around for a long time as well. We're told in the Quran that one of the first atheists was the Pharaoh himself. The Pharaoh told his people that I don't know of any other Lord besides me. So what's he saying? There's no Lord except him, which is atheism. Now let's talk about Stephen Hawking to start things off. Before we understand science, it is natural to believe that God created the universe, but now science offers a more convincing explanation. Let's talk about this sentence first. It seems like the more we learn about the surroundings that we have around us, which I'm going to call the creation, obviously it's a little bit biased on my part to call it that. We'll talk about that in a second. It seems like the more people learn about their surroundings, the further away they go from God, or what some atheists will say is an imaginary supernatural being that people that have religions and follow religions believe in. And in a book on evolution, which I've looked at as well, it is said that, well, we're not looking for any ad hoc explanations anymore. So back in the day, before people knew science and learned about what was around them and so on, people would say, well, the easy way out is to say that, God did it or God created it. So because we can't explain it. But suddenly, because we could explain it, all of a sudden we can say that, well, there's no creator. It's just we can explain things now with evolution and so on. Now, I'm not against evolution. In Islam, we are not against evolution. We don't believe in this notion that our ancestors are apes. In fact, in the Quran, the only time I know of that it mentions apes is when God turned some of the children of Israel into apes as a punishment for them to degrade them. And in Islam, we believe that the human being has been honored, has been given a very high, honorable status by God over all of the creation, or a lot of the creation. So to say that my ancestors are apes, if you believe in that, speak for yourself. Don't speak for me. If you believe that your ancestors are apes and that you evolved from apes, you know what? That's completely fine. You can believe whatever you want. I'm going to say that in Islam, we believe that God created man with his own hands. Of course, when we talk about God's hands, they're not like mine or yours. He describes himself that way in the Quran. And that basically Adam, as we believe in him, was created in a miraculous way. So now going back to the point, we're saying that, or Stephen Hawking is saying that science offers a more convincing explanation. I'm going to give you an analogy right now, which I want you to think about, and I want you to really be honest and sincere about this. Now, let me ask you this question. You're walking in the street right now, and you see this beautiful red car, and you're somebody who's never seen a car in his life. You're thinking, what is this thing? It's a red, it looks like it has something round at the bottom, it can move, and so on. Interesting thing. Now, the first thing you'll probably right away immediately think is that, well, someone must have put that car there. Someone designed that car. Someone created that car. I think anyone listening to me can agree with this, and I don't think there's any problem with that. Now, this same person who saw this car for the first time goes ahead and takes the time, 3 years or 4 years or whatever, and they study cars in detail, and they understand how the car is assembled, how it moves, how it gets the power, how the fuel moves in the car, and everything like that. So this person becomes a professional and understands how cars work. Now this very same person who 4 or 5 years ago saw the car for the first time and said, well, there must have been a designer or a creator for this amazing thing, this car, and someone must have put it there. All of a sudden this person understands how this car works, and now they say, well, there's no creator anymore, we can explain it. I think you can see the problem with that argument. That's the first thing, and I don't want to get into a lot of circular philosophical arguments about this. This is obviously common sense. So when you take this on a large scale, this whole universe that we're in, all these creatures that are in this universe, whether you're talking about the amazing world of bees or ants, or even within yourself, the human body, and how cells, they work in your body, and all the things that happen while you're not even aware of the complexity of the human body and all the processes around you. I mean, there's no way this came about by some sort of chance, random set of events, that caused this to happen, and just all of a sudden you and I are here, we have a conscience, we have an intellect, we can talk to each other, people are free to do whatever they want, some people believe, some disbelieve. This in itself shows you that the human being is a very sophisticated creature. Stephen Hawking says, what I meant by we would know the mind of God is we would know everything that God would know if there were a God, which there isn't. I'm an atheist. If there were a God, he says, we would know everything that God would know. People will maybe get into this and say, well, let's get philosophical about it and talk about, well, how much knowledge is there out there? Well, I don't know how much knowledge there is out there, but one thing we can, I think, agree on is that out of the knowledge that's out there, however much it is, we don't know very much. And the proof of that to me is that just go back 100 years ago, go back 500 years ago, and look at how much we've advanced, and look at today, how much we're advancing and how much we're learning. So this is kind of an arrogant comment, in my opinion, because you're saying that if there were a God, we would know everything that God knows. Really? So that means that we know everything in creation then. And then the last point, he says, in my opinion, there's no aspect of reality beyond the reach of the human mind. So does that mean that things which we know of today, that are realities that we see and observe in the microscope, those were not realities because we never saw them 1,000 years ago? They were always realities. That doesn't change. They were always realities, whether we like it or not. We just didn't know about them. So we have to humble ourselves. Part of opening up your mind and heart to this whole thing is being humble about it and knowing that as much as we are great as human beings, as a creation of God, we have to realize also our rank as far as what we are relative to everything around us. Yeah, things have been subjugated for us. We have the resources, we have knowledge that we're attaining and acquiring every single day. But again, it should really humble you and make you think, that's just amazing. I mean, something as simple as the bees being able to see ultraviolet light because they need the sun in order to follow the path and find the pollen in the flowers and things that they go and collect. When it's cloudy, I mean, if the bees couldn't see ultraviolet light, how could they find it? I mean, they would have been extinct in the first day. Where's the natural selection and where's the evolution there? Creatures are created by God as they are, but they evolve over time to adapt to their surroundings. So we're okay with microevolution. Macroevolution, we're not okay with that. So to say that evolution and natural selection and all those concepts, which are interesting and some of them may have some truth to them, we're not denying that those are suddenly replacements for the creator, that he's the one that created this whole universe and so on, is kind of, in my opinion, is a bit of a very shallow argument. So the fact is that the atheist is a polytheist for a number of reasons. You might think this is a very bold statement to say. I mean, I'm not a polytheist because I don't believe in anything. Well, let me tell you something. One of the things that religions agree on is the oneness of God in his lordship. So Islam is different than all the religions in a lot of ways, and one of the main ways is in the monotheism. But one aspect of monotheism is the fact that we believe in the oneness of God, or Allah as we call him in Arabic. And Arab Christians and Arab Jews, they also refer to him as Allah. So it's not some moon god or some weird statue or something. So in the monotheistic faiths, we believe, and I say monotheistic very sparingly because I don't really necessarily agree with that either. But the fact is, even those who are, they call themselves spiritual, they don't believe in any religions today that exist, will tell you that, yeah, there's a higher power. Someone created this whole thing. It didn't come by coincidence. Why is the atheist a polytheist? Very simple. As soon as you take God out of the equation and say that nothing created this whole thing that's around you, what you're saying is this. You're saying that this nature or this universe that we have today is somehow taking care of itself by itself. It's sustaining itself by itself, which means you have given something that only belongs to God. So the idea is that this notion that God doesn't exist It's common sense that he exists. It's common sense that everything around you here has been created by God. It didn't come by itself. Just like the example of the car I gave earlier, that you see this car for the first time, there must be a designer, there must be a creator for this car. This is not something hard to understand. The scholar can understand it, the layman can understand it. The Arabs at the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, they admitted to the fact that yes, there's a creator, yes, there's a sustainer, yes, there's a disposer of affairs. God created everything. And they called him Allah at the time as well. However, one thing you have to understand is that their problem was what? That they worshipped something besides God. Which brings me to the second point about the atheist being a polytheist. The second point that I want to mention is that in the Quran, in one verse, it mentions that, have you seen the one who has taken his personal whims and desires as his God? And then God has made this person go astray upon knowledge? Who can guide this person after Allah? Who can guide this person after Allah? PhDs, master's degrees, people with a lot of worldly knowledge about the sciences and everything, and this person with all the knowledge that they have and everything like this, they come to the conclusion, well, there's no God. You're denying something which even the simplest Bedouin in Arabia, with their limited knowledge, knew by instinct and just understood because it's so easy to understand. If you don't believe in God, that he exists, you think, well, I want evidence, I want to see him. If that's the evidence you're looking for, you're not going to find it. You're not going to find it. Because we believe that the purpose of creation, this entire place around us that we see here, is to worship God alone. God created you and I to worship him alone and nothing else besides God. We pray to him directly. We don't have any intermediaries between us and him. And the other reason for creation is that God is watching over us and is seeing who's the one that is the best in deed and conduct. Meaning that belief in the unseen is something necessary. Otherwise, what kind of a test would it be? In fact, the believers in the Quran, in the Noble Quran, it mentions that the believers are those who are, the true believers are the ones that believe in the unseen. Oh, I don't believe it if I don't see it. Hawking's statement, in my opinion, there is no aspect of reality beyond the reach of the human mind. So you're taking this limited, finite human mind with all its deficiencies and all the things that we are learning every day and saying that as long as I don't perceive it or see it or touch it with my hand, it's not real. As long as I didn't realize it, it's not real. I'm sorry, but to me, that's completely flawed, because things that we know today that we didn't know 500 years ago, they weren't real until we found out about them today. This is the first video that I wanted to start off with, and I want people to think about the points I mentioned. I'll be back with more because there's a lot more to discuss on this, and I want people to think about these points. And again, we're not in this to insult anyone or to put anyone down. We're only in this to provoke some thought and some open dialogue. That's why social media is great when it comes to this. We're able to discuss, we're able to debate, explain, and exchange ideas. This is part of being a human being, is that we have to understand each other. One of the biggest problems we have today is that we rely on the media to learn about each other. You know, the things that happen around the world about these people that are extremists and the people that do things which are in the name of religions or political agendas or movements, or someone already has a problem, or they've already been they've already been convicted for different things in the past. They do something and then all of a sudden you're attributed to the religion that they follow. That's completely wrong. You want to learn about a religion, you want to learn about a way of life, you go to the primary sources. Don't go by the followers. Because in today's world, as different as we are, there are a lot of people who don't follow the faith accurately. Just like there are Christians who don't follow the Bible, there are Muslims who don't follow the Quran, and there are people out there who have different ideologies, whether they're religious or not religious, and they do things in the name of these different beliefs that they have, and then they attribute it to their belief that they're upon. So it's not something new. It'll repeat itself. And this is what I wanted to say for today. I hope that we can take all this talk that we're going to start to heart. Again, have a wonderful day, and I'll be back with more videos in the near future. Thank you.
وقالوا ما هي إلا حياتنا الدنيا نموت ونحيا وما يهلكنا إلا الدهر وما لهم بذلك من علم إن هم إلا يظنون